After being reborn, I finally decided to let Charlotte go. She was destined to shine on the stage, so I chose to hide abroad. She liked the prop master by her side, so I directly proposed to call off our engagement. In my previous life, I trapped her with a marriage contract that bound her for a lifetime. Until death, she never got to be openly together with Kevin, but it was only when I was lonely in the nursing home that I realized I had also been trapped for a lifetime. Chapter 1. After being reborn, the first thing I did was submit the application form that had been lying on my computer for a long time. The moment I saw the acceptance letter, I felt like I was living in another world. My mentor, who had been advising me all along, was pleased and said, "I previously encouraged you to pursue a PhD abroad. You said you couldn't go because your fiancé was working in North City, but now you've finally come to terms with it." Speaking of Charlotte, she was truly a gifted young woman. She came from a well-off family and had already achieved some success in her career at a young age. She was somewhat famous in the industry and was currently on an upward trajectory. As for me, apart from having good grades, I wasn't remarkable in any other aspect. If it weren't for the agreement our parents made when we were young, Charlotte and I would never have connected. My eyes were firm as I said, "Professor, this time I want to try to follow my own path." My mentor patted me and said, "Pursuing a PhD is long and lonely. You need to be mentally prepared. Even though it's long, it's not as long as my previous life. In my last life, I gave up the opportunity to pursue a PhD abroad. The Chan family was urging us to get married. Just a month after our marriage, she became pregnant. She didn't want to have the baby, saying it would affect her acting career. But I was so desperate to have a family that I took on all the major and minor household matters myself. From then on, I was trapped in family trivialities. Meanwhile, Charlotte felt her mission was accomplished and rarely returned home. She was busy with performances and rehearsals. Her fame was growing, and she was constantly traveling for work. But wherever she went, Kevin always stayed by her side as the prop master. Besides work, he also took care of her daily life. As for me, I was stuck with the Chan family, raising the child and taking care of the elderly. Our son grew up in a single-parent household, and I always felt he was very attached to me, until I saw him getting engaged to Kevin's niece. In the private room, he acted without any reservations, picking up his teacup and smiling broadly as he called out, "Dad, would you like some tea?" A month later, he confessed to me, his tone completely indifferent. He said, "Dad, Mom is a career-oriented woman. You, as a stay-at-home father, have already bound her for a lifetime. That's enough." He continued, "Men who reach your level are really pathetic. Mom has already given you face. You can't be so greedy and want everything." He felt that only Charlotte was bound by the marriage contract. As for me, I deserved to be a victim of family life. But why? When we were young, I asked for her consent. She agreed to the arranged marriage set by our elders. Because of that, I gave up my career and my dreams. She worked hard to build her career, while I tirelessly took care of the elderly. She was busy with performances and rehearsals, and I had to manage 3 meals a day for the whole family. At the toughest times, I was holding my son in one hand and a medical appointment slip in the other. I was running up and down alone, arranging doctor visits, buying medicine, and making payments for the elderly. By the age of 50, Charlotte's career was soaring, and she was achieving great success. Meanwhile, my social circle was shrinking, and life had me firmly trapped. At this point, everyone said I wasn't good enough for her. Everyone advised me to let go, and even my son, whom I raised single-handedly, felt that Kevin should be the one by her side, but I refused. In the last encounter with my son, we parted on bad terms. He left me standing on the street. As I slowly collapsed, watching his retreating figure, I felt immense regret. If I could do it all over again, I absolutely would never give up my own life. Chapter 2. Back to the present. After returning to the apartment, I put away the acceptance letter and turned to the kitchen to bake a tray of egg tarts. This apartment belongs to the Chan family. To accommodate my studies, Charlotte Chan and I live together here. On the calendar in the living room, I drew a big red circle. In half a month, I can leave here and live the life I've always wanted. Just after finishing the drawing, Charlotte came back. When the door opened, there were 2 figures behind her, a taller one and a smaller one, Kevin and his niece. Seeing me come to open the door, Kevin gave a seemingly cheerful smile. "Joel, Charlotte asked me to come upstairs and sit, adding another bit of trouble for you." The little girl was a regular visitor. Sensing the sweet aroma in the air, she eagerly ran into the kitchen and took desserts from the tray herself. 6 egg tarts, 2 each. They divided them happily, but there were none for me. When I came out of the kitchen, the 3 heads crowded towards me, chatting and laughing. Upon tasting an egg tart, the 3 of them simultaneously spat it out. "Uncle, it's so bitter." I stood still as Charlotte busily moved about. One moment she was serving water, the next she was passing tea. Finally, Kevin forced a smile and left the door. The dimples that usually appeared on his cheeks were gone this time. His words, however, remained forgiving and magnanimous. Charlotte, Joel's cooking still has room for improvement. You two must not argue. Charlotte silently sent them out the door. When she returned, I turned around and brought out another tray of egg tarts. Charlotte hesitated before explaining. Ava is the orphan of my sister. Before she died, she repeatedly urged me to take good care of Kevin. I let the child taste your delicious desserts. I still remained silent. She dryly added, if you mind so much, I will call them less often in the future. The next day, early in the morning, I went to pack my luggage, preparing to go to City C in a couple of days. Since I had decided to call off the engagement, I needed to speak clearly early on, out of respect and to avoid any future entanglements. While packing, I saw a mud doll. It was the one Charlotte gave me when I was a child. Back then, she was firm in her words, and her chubby hands were full of mud spots. Joel, Mom said you'll be my husband when you grow up, so this is for you. The doll ended up in my suitcase. No longer needed the doll. No longer needed her. I got up and drew a big cross on the calendar in the living room. 14 days left, and I will leave here. That night, Charlotte came back very late. She looked at the food on the table as if nothing was wrong. I ate before coming back. A woman who steals food doesn't even know to wipe her mouth. After the last time, she knew that bringing Kevin back would make me angry, so she simply ate outside. Fortunately, I didn't cook her a meal either. After dinner, back in the room, I began to organize documents, making final preparations before school. Charlotte silently appeared behind me. I closed the laptop with my hand. What's wrong? She was silent for a moment before saying, the wedding planners and hotel people have contacted me. Can we set the date on September 1st? What a good date choice. Coinciding with my first day of school, I looked up directly at Charlotte, and 3 seconds later, she silently avoided my gaze. In my previous life, she handled the matters between me and him as if dealing with business affairs, dating, marriage, having children, supporting the family. From outsiders' perspectives, she did everything extremely well, but only I could feel her aloofness and coldness. It wasn't until before her death that I realized belatedly, probably, she was dissatisfied with this marriage from the beginning. But in the end, only I withered away in this marriage. So I asked her, Charlotte, have you decided? She was stunned, not expecting me to ask like this. Then I heard the exact same answer as in my last life. She said, Joel, you are the only husband I acknowledge. This time, I didn't hesitate. I said, marriage is a big matter. We need to discuss it with our parents. The date isn't urgent. Let's wait a bit longer. She felt relieved and smiled. Changing the topic. Still reading English literature so late? Don't get too tired. That was my enrollment assignment. In this life, I want to choose the path I didn't choose. I want to see how exciting Joel can live without Charlotte. On the third day, Charlotte woke up early. When I got up, there was a bowl of crab roe buns from Nanching on the table. They were my favorite. It was rare for her to try to please me, so I patiently awaited her move. Sure enough, Charlotte hesitated before speaking. Joel, I can't accompany you to your parents' house this time. Ava is sick, and Kevin can't manage on his own. Only then did I start eating. I hadn't yet figured out an excuse to prevent her from coming with me. Now it was perfect, a win-win situation for both of us. Seeing me nod in agreement, Charlotte hurriedly left the house. I glanced at the calendar on the wall. There were 13 days left. Today was the day to call off the engagement. The Chan parents were kind to me, but breaking off the engagement wasn't difficult. I just needed to tell them that Charlotte had a bright future and was about to soar to great heights. As for her and me, we were no longer compatible. Chapter 3. The living room of the Chan household was silent and oppressive. I sat aside, silently twirling the teacup in my hand. Ms. Chan opened her mouth several times, only to swallow her words back. Over the past few years, I had heard quite a bit about Kevin. After holding back her words for a long time, she finally said, even if she has feelings for Kevin, you two are still engaged. If she dares to back out, I'll deal with her. Mr. Chan was the final authority. Since you've decided to call off the engagement, we respect your decision. But Joel, the relationship between our two families won't change. We still consider you our closest junior. Charlotte was now the apple of everyone's eye, so even her biological parents couldn't understand why I insisted on calling off the engagement. But I understood that regarding this arranged marriage, they probably had some hidden expectations. Now that I took the initiative to end it, it was somewhat considerate. This was good for my future life. Regarding Charlotte and the Chan family, I no longer wanted any entanglements. After all, in the end, they were still family. Engagement terminated. To prevent any complications, I lied to them, saying that Charlotte was too busy and that she had asked me to return alone. After hearing this, Ms. Chan felt a bit guilty towards me. She advised me to stay at their house for a while before leaving. Coincidentally, I didn't want to go back to that small apartment and live in constant proximity with Charlotte day and night. I stayed at the Chan household for 10 days. During these 10 days, Charlotte only made one phone call. After learning that I was staying with the Chans, she never called again. She was still the same as before. Regarding our relationship, she maintained a businesslike demeanor. No concern, no loss of composure. Upon returning, the first thing I did was mark 10 big red crosses on the calendar. 4 days left. Only 4 days remained. I was carrying my luggage back home when I heard the door open. Charlotte stood outside the door, followed closely by Kevin and Ava. "You're back." Charlotte looked a bit surprised when she saw me. Kevin and Ava actually turned and entered my room. I frowned as I saw him naturally close the door to my room. The living room was a mess. Upon closer inspection, it was filled with my belongings. I looked at Charlotte. A hint of embarrassment flashed across her face. Kevin's house had a leak due to heavy rain a couple of days ago, so he's staying here temporarily for 2 days. I saw you weren't home and you didn't have much stuff, so I let him stay in your room for now. I hadn't even told her about calling off the engagement yet. The two of them were truly unabashed, facing my piercing gaze. Charlotte generously said, "You can move into my room first and sleep in my bedroom temporarily." As Charlotte spoke, she opened the door to her room. "Oh, by the way, where are the books from your room? Why are there so few things?" "Of course, they were moved out. I sold them. I thought I wouldn't need them after marriage," I explained. Charlotte frowned. "Even after marriage, you might still need them. Self-improvement is important at any time. Anyway, if you want to sell them, go ahead." She knew everything from the start, but she didn't care. She watched me being consumed by that family. As a beneficiary of their interests, Charlotte was content and at ease, but she couldn't and shouldn't be. While enjoying my efforts, she was also distracted by Kevin. I pressed my lips together and remained silent. Seeing my continued silence, she finally said, "By the way, what did your parents say?" Charlotte took the bag from my hand as well. I paused. "I did some calculations. The timing isn't right. We can talk about it later." There were still 4 days left. I used this excuse to buy some time. When I left, I would explain everything clearly to her. Charlotte sighed with relief, then put on a concealed smile. She looked at the calendar in the living room. "Looks like we need to find another good date again." After saying that, she rushed to the kitchen to cook. She didn't even notice what I had marked on the calendar. I looked at Charlotte's household registration book on the desk by the window. When I came to my senses and wanted to help, I heard the faint voices of 3 people outside. A man with a deep voice, a charming woman, and an adorable child. I silently sat down again. In reality, having already called off the engagement, living together was inappropriate, especially sharing the same room. But with only 4 days left, I couldn't find a suitable rental outside. After thinking it over, it seemed I could only eat a meal and then set up a temporary sleeping arrangement in the living room before bed. Chapter 4. Early the next morning, still half asleep, Ava was causing a loud commotion in the living room. Kevin not only ignored it but was also making clanging noises in the kitchen. Charlotte simply sat on the sofa, smiling as she watched the two of them. Perhaps this was the image of a happy family she had in her mind. I used the excuse of buying groceries and hurriedly left the house. As soon as I stepped outside, I took a deep breath. "Why did Joel come back? Didn't you say you were going to visit your in-laws?" My neighbor Susan saw me leave and approached me. Her words were filled with good-natured teasing. "Not your in-laws." Susan was taken aback for a moment, then laughed, thinking I was indulging Charlotte's reputation. "Yes, still not your in-laws. We always have to wait until we're married to change that." She noticed my expression had lost its usual smile. Susan hesitated, then couldn't hold back any longer. She began to reprimand me in a low voice. "These past 2 days, when you weren't around, Charlotte brought men home. I asked her once, and she actually said it was with your permission. That man looks restless. Did you really nod to that? The wedding isn't even done yet." "Silly child, be more careful. With Charlotte's qualifications, if she hadn't been engaged to you, I guarantee I would have introduced my nephew to her. Who wouldn't be attracted? Men are flocking one after another. You need to be sharp." Even if men were approaching one after another, only Kevin stood by Charlotte's side. She didn't need to worry because Charlotte would always back him up. What I didn't expect was that Charlotte outwardly claimed it was my decision. She was careful not to let any taint touch Kevin. She had indeed put in a lot of effort, but some things, I still couldn't speak about them now. Susan saw that I was soft-hearted, pouted, and finally kept advising me to be more cautious at home. When I returned, the living room was empty. However, I could hear rustling sounds coming from my basement. After a while, Ava bounced up to the room. She was holding a tattered piece of drawing paper. I squinted to see. It was a portrait I drew of Charlotte last New Year's Day. The woman in the painting still had cold eyes, but her mouth held a faint smile. The The room was warm like spring, and fireworks illuminated the outside. During those few hours, Charlotte's eyes were only for me. I always thought that after marriage, we would spend many days and nights repeating such simple happiness, but I never expected that it was her only time to look at me seriously. The drawing in Ava's hand was already torn and tattered. There were sticky sugar stains on the paper. Behind her, Kevin had followed up. "Kids don't understand. Joel, you won't hold it against the child, will you?" His tone was gentle, but the pride and contempt in the corners of his eyes were clear. "Since you know they don't understand, educate them more." It seemed he didn't expect me to retort, and Kevin was momentarily stunned. "Kids understand the atmosphere the best." And Ava suddenly rushed forward. Her dirty little hand slapped mine, leaving a black handprint on my shirt. "You can't bully my uncle." The little girl's voice was sharp and piercing. Charlotte rushed in from outside the door. She grabbed Ava and pulled her into her arms. I didn't look at her. My gaze shifted to the fallen drawing paper. Charlotte followed my line of sight and was momentarily stunned. She clearly understood something. She wanted to say something but swallowed her words back. Kevin looked even more pleased, his face showing a facade of grievance. "Charlotte, I'm sorry. It's all my fault for not keeping a better eye on Ava." At that moment, my laughter erupted abruptly. All three pairs of eyes turned to look at me at the same time. I picked up the drawing, held it up to the light, and said, "I didn't draw it right. The lighting in the house wasn't this bright." After saying that, I threw the drawing into the trash can and walked into the kitchen with a blank expression. Charlotte suddenly looked up, staring blankly at my retreating figure, unable to attend to Ava's continued crying and fussing. Charlotte followed me into the kitchen. She hesitated for a long moment before awkwardly opening her mouth. "These past 2 days, I've been busy looking for a place. In a couple of days, Kevin will move out with Ava. I know you don't like him. Can you just bear with it a little longer?" Without much thought, I replied, "Sure." After all, there were still 3 days left before I had to leave. It was originally the Chan family's house. By then, how they would manage their lives behind closed doors in this house wouldn't concern me anymore. I had agreed too quickly, and Charlotte struggled to speak, her face turning pale and green, looking very uncomfortable. She thought I was angry about what just happened inside, pulling me back. "Ava is still a child. I've told you many times. I take care of them only because of my sister's request. Kevin isn't easy either. Can't you stop thinking of people as so despicable?" I sneered. "So, you brought him back and even told others it was my idea." Charlotte's breath caught, and she opened her mouth but couldn't say a word. I laughed. See, no matter how eloquent her words were, the inner turmoil and sordid thoughts couldn't deceive anyone. Concerned about maintaining the elder's face, I didn't want to ruin her career, but it had to be this way. Chapter 5. Early the next morning, I woke up early. Ava's loud commotion from yesterday had lingered in my mind. There must still be some of my things in the basement of the house. Taking advantage of the fact that they hadn't woken up yet, I went down to the basement to pack my things. Living in this house for several years, even with over a dozen days of preparation in advance, I still had many items left behind. I packed meticulously. For the rest of my life, this lifetime, I no longer wanted to have any connection with Charlotte. Since I had decided to leave, I wanted to leave completely. Finally, I organized everything into 3 large bags. As soon as I opened the door, I saw that Charlotte had already prepared breakfast. Seeing the things I was holding, Charlotte was stunned. "Where are you taking those things?" My tone was indifferent. "Throwing them away. There are too many useless items." Charlotte glanced at them and then looked away, turning to knock on the door of the room next door. "Kevin, take Ava and get up. Breakfast is ready, on the dining table." As soon as Ava saw me, she snorted and moved her breakfast closer to herself and Kevin. Charlotte brought out a fried egg and smiled at me. "You're up, come here. I made a fried egg for you." Turning her head to see the items in front of Ava and Kevin, she awkwardly smiled. "Good girl Ava, can you share some with Uncle Joel?" I ignored the group and left the house directly. There were only a few days left before the semester started. All the necessary procedures had been prepared. I planned to exchange some petty foreign currency again. Additionally, I wanted to see what else I needed to buy. Once everything was settled, I booked a room at a hotel, although there were only 2 days left. Seeing Charlotte every day with my head down and her looking up was really unsettling. Since she thought I was jealous of Kevin, I decided to let her maintain that misunderstanding and use it as an excuse to move out. Once everything was in order, I returned home, but I saw Ava playing with my passport in her hands. My head buzzed. "What are you doing?" I snatched the passport back, startling Ava, who fell off the table. Her heart-wrenching cries drew Kevin from another room. "What are you doing? Who told you to bully Ava?" Kevin pushed me away, tenderly picking up the child. I was trembling with anger, carefully placing the passport back into my bag. "Am I bullying her? Don't you see what she did? Who told you to touch my things? Get out." Kevin stood up holding the child, looking coldly at me. Haha, you haven't even married Charlotte yet. This isn't your place to decide. He walked to the door with the child in his arms, paused for a moment, then turned back. Even if you did get married, you couldn't compete with me. With a loud bang, the door was closed. Kevin's hostility towards me always surfaced when Charlotte wasn't around. In the past, I always kept retreating when facing him. He traveled extensively with Charlotte, gradually becoming capable on his own. Everyone said they were the perfect partners. In comparison, I was just a stay-at-home father. Much inferior, but with a second chance at life, I felt suddenly relieved. He might be excellent, but I had my own strengths. Why should Kevin and I be placed on opposite ends of the scale? Because of Charlotte, who wasn't worth it. Besides Charlotte, did I have nothing else in life? I could continue my studies, contributing to the relentless pursuit of medical excellence for humanity. I could go out, broaden my horizons, and gain more knowledge. This quagmire here would only hinder my progress. As for Kevin, when I first returned, I had considered taking revenge on him. In my past life, he made my marriage nominally exist. I thought about causing trouble at their theater or exposing him online, but what good would it do? As long as Charlotte wanted, she had 100 ways to continue taking care of Kevin. Moreover, if Charlotte wasn't interested, even if Kevin stood before her naked, she wouldn't give him a glance. Why bother? It was just a misguided love. I didn't want to waste my life dealing with it anymore. So I spoke firmly to Kevin. Listen, no matter what your relationship with Charlotte is, whether you admit it or not, it has nothing to do with me anymore. I'm not going to marry her. If you understand what I'm saying, you should focus more on Charlotte instead of provoking me. Otherwise, I might change my mind at any time. Kevin was stunned. He waved his hand, trying to deny it, as if he was afraid of genuinely angering me. Finally, he reluctantly went back to his room. I packed my things, took one last look at the apartment. Looking around, there were traces of other men who had lived here. Nothing to be attached to. I turned around and left. Chapter 6. Back at the hotel, I quickly packed up and began composing a message to Charlotte. Although she had treated me poorly in many ways, in this lifetime, up to this point, we didn't have any significant grievances. In our past life, we had mutually hindered each other, ending up in an unclear state. If possible, I still wanted to clarify things in this lifetime. In the message, I didn't mention where I was going. I simply told her that I had decided to continue pursuing my PhD in medicine. Regarding our engagement, she didn't want to marry me, and I didn't want to marry her either, so we would just let it go. From now on, we would each find our own happiness. Before I could send the message, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Charlotte standing outside. She looked out of breath, as if she had been running for a long time. Why are you here? She gasped a few breaths. I finally found you. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're okay. I remained silent, thinking she was about to accuse me again. All right, don't be angry. Come back with me. Charlotte squeezed in, trying to help me pack. I turned off my phone screen with my hands behind my back, but her gaze shifted and landed on my passport on the table. Charlotte's expression changed drastically. Where are you going? I was taken aback, frustrated that I hadn't packed my things properly. In the afternoon, Ava was rummaging through my things. I was afraid she would damage them, so I took them out. Seeing my composed demeanor, Charlotte sighed with relief. I need to keep them safe so we can use them during our honeymoon. She handed me the passport, instructing me to place it in my close-to-body bag. I complied without hesitation. Then, pressing down on her hands as she tried to pack, Charlotte frowned. What? Are you still angry? Ava was wrong. But she's still a child. Stop causing a scene. I just find it odd. Ava has always been well-behaved, but every time you come back, you end up clashing with her. You. Charlotte wanted to say more, but seeing me look at her calmly, she suddenly stopped speaking. I only asked her one question. Does Kevin know you came to find me? Charlotte was somewhat annoyed. What does that have to do with him? Why are you always clinging to Kevin? I ignored her and continued. I guess he doesn't know. Otherwise, you wouldn't be standing here. I'm your fiancé. If we're fighting, it's natural for you to come find me. Then why, subconsciously, don't you want to tell him? Why do you always unconsciously avoid anything related to me in front of him? Every time we argue, you say it's because of your sister that you take such good care of him. You have several sisters. Why aren't the others as attentive as you? Charlotte, I called her softly. Since you don't love me, just let me go. Charlotte's expression changed drastically, and her body seemed to sway slightly. After a while, she struggled to say, since you're not going back, then reflect on yourself here. I'll come back to pick you up in a few days. Charlotte turned around and fled in a disheveled state. I never intended to hurt you. I'm going back to prepare for the wedding. Listening to her stumbling footsteps fade away, I closed the door expressionlessly. It's so ridiculous. In her eyes, her willingness to prepare for the wedding, to marry me, was a great blessing. I should be deeply grateful. Chapter 7. After Charlotte left, I handled my check-in on my phone and then went out to have dinner with a close friend from school. After graduation, everyone went their separate ways, and by the time I returned, some people might be hard to see again. At the table, my closest friend hesitated before speaking. He knew some things about me and Charlotte. "Joel, didn't you say you'd get married after graduation? Why are you going abroad to further your studies again?" Long-distance relationships are a hurdle many couples can't overcome. I shook my head with a smile. "I'm not getting married." Then I raised my glass. To youth, to friendship, to myself. So, cheers to youth, friendship, and myself. After returning home, I took an early shower and went to bed. I expected to toss and turn all night, but instead, I had a good night's sleep and woke up at dawn. Upon waking, I headed straight to the airport. Before boarding the plane, I sent the message I had been editing for a long time to Charlotte. After sending the message, my phone buzzed incessantly. I turned it off immediately. As the plane ascended, I felt a lightness in my body. In a daze, it was as if I saw my past self saying, "Thank you." When the plane landed and I truly set foot on foreign soil, I suddenly felt like crying. In my past life, I could never take this step, but now it was so easy. As long as I wanted to, I composed myself and went to register at the school. In my previous life, I never had the chance to set foot on a university campus. This time, I cherished the opportunity dearly. Besides eating and sleeping, I spent my time either in class or in the library. During this period, besides being busy, I received 3 calls from Charlotte. The first call was a month after the semester officially began. Charlotte had gone through various means and finally obtained my number. When a stranger's number appeared on the screen, I had already guessed it was her. On the phone, Charlotte was very emotional. She said she didn't agree to break off the engagement. She said that in her heart, I had always been her husband. Half a minute later, I hung up the phone. The second call was 2 months into the semester. In the midst of a heavy snowfall, Charlotte's tired voice came through. She said she had arranged a house and a job for Kevin and had clearly told him that she wouldn't see him again. That day, I still listened quietly. Charlotte's last call was on Christmas. In the midst of a heavy snowfall, I spoke for the first time. I said, "Charlotte, the semester end exam results are out today. I got an A. At the beginning of the semester, I struggled with my studies, learning the language while attending classes and rushing to the lab to keep up with progress. The experiments weren't going well, facing endless failures. No one knew when I would achieve results." Charlotte listened attentively on the other end, her breathing shallow. Finally, I said, "But you know what, Charlotte? I'm very happy. I will never confine myself again." Charlotte's voice suddenly choked. Her tired voice echoed. "But I miss you." See, her subject was still I. She never cared about my emotional outlet, even in moments of reconciliation. After that call ended, I cried my heart out on the streets of the foreign city. No matter how hard I tried in my past life, I was hysterical, hateful, and regretful, but I never shed tears. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to cry. After wiping away my tears, I began to study even harder. In my second year of the PhD, I made a breakthrough in an experiment. Although the path from the experiment to clinical application was still long, only by persevering could thousands of patients benefit. Every late night, I would look up from the lab and see my peers still buried in their work, feeling an inexplicable drive supporting me. The feeling of fighting for an ideal was truly wonderful. Later, I heard from a classmate that Charlotte had gotten married. Her partner was Kevin. When my classmate explained, carefully considering my feelings, he said, "I heard Charlotte had been preparing for a performance in the city where you're studying. After Kevin found out, he went to cause trouble." I didn't hear the details, but the next day, the two of them were sleeping in the same bed. Charlotte stubbornly refused to agree, but she got pregnant. I didn't respond. In this lifetime, she still entered marriage out of responsibility, as a daughter, as a mother, but she never took on the responsibility of being a wife. At the end of the conversation, my classmate sighed. "When you went to school, I thought leaving Charlotte was your loss. Now I realize, men living their own lives truly shine. Joel, you're something we all admire now." 7 years later, I graduated with my PhD, returning to my homeland with a heap of research achievements. The rest of my life was filled with good times.